Throughout the enlightened communities, a small percentage of the souls residing there were preparing for ascension into their fifth-density crystal light bodies. It was obvious to the general membership of each community that these souls had moved to a new level of understanding, and hence, they were usually given positions on the high councils of the communities of light. Some were quite mobile, seeming to be unaffected by the transportation difficulties of the third-density world. They were rapidly developing their more advanced psychic and intuitive abilities, and a few were now able to teleport themselves from one location to another, although the majority still relied on conventional means of transport. Some used new electromagnetic motorized devices, while others were ferried about by the ETs. The ascending ones offered workshops and seminars in personal development and provided healing and counseling for fourth-density souls who needed extra help surmounting their emotional and psychological issues. There was still a lot of grief to be integrated around the loss of family and friends. A few third-density family members were able to communicate with their fourth-density spouses, sons, daughters, cousins and the like, but the majority had broken off all communication quite some time ago. Nevertheless, as the Earth continued to ascend, a few fourth-density family members hoped and prayed that some of their loved ones in third density would be able to transition into the new Earth. As the ascension continued, souls noticed a change in the air. Things became translucent and sound waves were different. Energy seemed to crackle and pop, and the atmosphere appeared to be more tangible, as if you could see the colors and textures of the individual gases. The aurora borealis became brilliant almost every night, even at low latitudes. To some fourth-density souls, it felt as though sound waves were traveling through water, or hollow pipes, or even cellophane. Surges of electricity would go through their bodies, and sleep became almost impossible. As the ascension continued, the Earth began to feel very different. In some ways nothing had changed, but in other ways, it was as though the world had entered yet another dimension, different from the one it had entered during the portals. The electromagnetic interference from portal fluctuations had destroyed many of the telecommunications devices and satellites utilized by the third-density humans. This, along with the widening gulf in vibrational states between third and fourth densities, essentially stopped the flow of communication between the two realms. The new Earth was now truly separated energetically from the old Earth. For all practical purposes, the two existed in completely different dimensions with almost no overlap between them. Conventional travel became nearly impossible, and so the fourth-density souls released their final attachments to the old world and occupied themselves with the monumental daily tasks that confronted them: gardening, building, organizing, meeting, and most importantly, communing heart-to-heart with each other. The post-portal years. The communities of light prospered and thrived. Agricultural methods were perfected, and although the climate of Earth was in a great state of flux, the locations of the centers of light were exactly right for good yields of a variety of crops. Energy-efficient buildings powered by electromagnetic generators became the norm. Holistic healing modalities were a way of life. New children came forth from expectant mothers, and these children were already highly advanced in their soul evolution. Schools were built to accommodate the children, but they were completely unlike the third-density schools that had crumbled and decayed. The enlightened schools recognized the unique needs of the new children. Emphasis was placed on self-examination and self-awareness, as well as harnessing creativity. These children grew up knowing that they lived in a friendly universe filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. They witnessed unconditionally loving adults and a world of plenty. By now, things had deteriorated so much in the third-density world that entire areas were essentially quarantined energetically from the communities of light. The fledgling fourth-density souls knew that they could not remain for long in the lower levels without becoming contaminated by the constant barrage of negative thought forms and pollution. Only those ascending into fifth density could walk openly among the third density cities and be unaffected, though they rarely did so because by now there were almost no souls remaining in the decaying cities that were open and receptive to the enlightened teachings. The dominant consciousness of the third density was one of survival, something that was becoming more difficult every day. The fourth density adults taught the new children about the world that had once been, and many of them had a hard time believing such a world could exist. Some had never incarnated on a world where war could take place, and the thought of human beings killing one another was completely foreign to them. These new children would travel with their parents to visit other communities of light, but in almost every case were not allowed to venture near a decaying third density city. These young souls needed to stay pure and build strong bodies free of discordant thought forms. Of course, some brought issues from past lifetimes to be healed, but because they were raised by an enlightened group of souls, this healing process occurred rapidly. These children did not forget their past lifetimes, nor did their psychic and intuitive abilities wither and atrophy as they grew up. They were the first generation to grow up in the new golden age. The divergence is complete. During the years following the portal shifts, the third density civilization deteriorated further until only a few souls remained in that level of vibration. Mass plagues and pestilence spread across many of the heavily populated areas and, due to the decreased immune function of third density humans, most were unable to resist the invading viruses, bacteria, fungi, heavy metal contamination, hydrocarbons and radiation. The population dropped from nearly 8 billion to scarcely more than 2 billion. About half of the deaths were the result of immune system failure and the resulting invading organisms and chemicals. The rest of the deaths were from a variety of factors, including starvation, dehydration, extreme hot and cold, war, flood, earthquakes, volcanoes, and violent weather. After 2030, war became nearly non-existent on Earth. The only violence was from scuffles between individuals or roving gangs where physical survival was at stake. The economic failures and political upheavals had made it nearly impossible for third density souls to travel using airplanes and modern transport systems. Countries no longer had the money or natural resources to manufacture armaments. In many cities, transportation was only possible by foot or bicycle due to extreme shortages of fuel. In the enlightened communities of the fourth density Earth, a whole different picture was unfolding. Great harmony was spreading forth as more and more enlightened ones resolved their negative emotions and psychological blockages. New farming methods and alternative energy sources were now firmly in place, creating a level of prosperity that had scarcely been dreamed of even by proponents of utopias. Increasingly, the teachings of the day were about ascension into fifth density, what it is, how it works, and when souls can expect to enter the immortal, crystal light body. The souls already firmly on the path of ascension were having experiences of the etheric earth, including the wondrous realms of nature spirits, fairies, devas, sprites, gnomes, and all manner of animal and plant spirits. To the ascending souls, the world was a place of indescribable beauty. Everything sparkled and shone with a radiance formerly only seen clairvoyantly. The eyes, ears and senses of their bodies were changing. They could now see and hear broader frequencies. The visible and auditory spectrums were expanding. Physical strength was also increasing. They found they could tolerate great extremes of hot or cold. Their bodies rarely, if ever, experienced injury or discomfort. Radiant life force energy coursed through their veins. Sleep became less and less necessary. The need to eat dropped slowly away until many of them became breatharians, living solely on oxygen and prana, pure etheric life force energy. The ascending ones were the teachers of the new earth. They gathered together with the fourth density evolving souls and led seminars, workshops and healing circles on a regular basis. They were the wise counselors and holistic practitioners that kept the fourth density communities healthy and vibrant. Revisiting the passage of Nibiru. As 2030 came into view, excitement rose as amateur astronomers detected a significant heavenly body heading for the solar system. It was about 1/3 the size of Earth and appeared lifeless to those with physical eyes, yet to clairvoyants and the ascending souls, this planetoid revealed itself to be anything but lifeless. The return of Nibiru meant the reappearance of the Anunnaki, the wise elders of ancient civilizations that had brought both enlightenment and ruin, depending on the occasion. The wise Anunnaki already knew about the state of affairs on Earth. In fact, some of the highest-level teachers of Nibiru were able to journey to Earth using pure consciousness, even though the planetoid itself was still outside the orbit of Pluto. As the Anunnaki came into the energy field of Earth, though still millions of miles away physically, they saw the death and destruction of the third density world. Of course, the wise ones of their race had already shared their wisdom and knowledge of the Earth changes with the people of Nibiru, but it was still quite a shock for the average Nibiruan to behold the scenes of destruction. To their relief, they saw, through their clairvoyant lenses and sophisticated technological equipment, the blossoming fourth density communities of light and the ascending ones shining brightly. The Anunnaki organized the brightest and best of their race and prepared them to interact cautiously among the members of the new Earth. During the passage of Nibiru, which came within 25 million miles of Earth at one point, many visitations occurred between the 5th through 9th density members of the planetoid and the enlightened human race. The Anunnaki shared their wisdom and technology with the new Earth much more freely than they had in the past with the Sumerians and Egyptians. This time the Nibiruans knew that the humans would not misuse the higher technologies. In addition, the people of Nibiru had evolved considerably since their last visit to Earth. The minority of Anunnaki that had caused trouble before on the Earth were now healed and willing to assist in compassionate ways with the rebuilding of Earth. The electromagnetic fluctuations that occurred on Earth with the close passage of Nibiru served to once again accelerate the evolution of enlightened humanity, resulting in a third wave of ascension. Now, millions of surviving souls on planet Earth were solidly on the path of ascension into fifth density. The third density population of Earth was essentially non-existent by now. The fourth density population numbered somewhere between 1 and 2 billion. They were spread out across thousands of intentional communities, ranging from homesteads with just a few people, to well-organized new cities with as many as 100,000 souls residing in each one. In 2030, the last of the third-density humans who had evolved sufficiently to enter the new Golden Age came straggling into the fourth-density intentional communities. They were welcomed with open arms. The Galactic Shift. 2030 to 2100. The Galactic Shift, which began in about 1950, reached its peak around 2025. This shift affected the entire solar system and many areas of the Milky Way galaxy in the same general vicinity as the solar system. The mechanics of the galactic shift were detailed in the book, Earth Changes and Beyond. As the Earth continued to move through the electromagnetic null zone, the quarantine around the Earth began to be lifted. With almost all of the darker human souls now departed and the negative ET races removed from the astral realms of Earth, benevolent beings from all over the galaxy were able to come to Earth and interact with the more enlightened members of the human race. Because the overall vibration of Earth was now high enough, they no longer needed to take the extraordinary precautions that were necessary prior to this time period. During 2030 to 2100, the ascending souls reached a level of vibration whereby they were no longer visible to beings vibrating at third density. Already psychologically invisible, they became virtually undetectable by the instruments of third-density scientists. Of course there were very few third-density souls around to witness this anyway, perhaps a small number living in caves or underground, though the ones that had fled underground to escape the plagues and pollution had experienced the same immune system issues as their brethren on the surface of the planet. Therefore their numbers were extremely small, and the lack of sunlight and fresh air had mutated their bodies, often in strange ways, causing some of them to resemble earlier humanoid forms. As the ascending souls began completing their ascension process into fifth density, they radiated a beautiful golden halo or aura of light that was clearly visible to the fourth density souls. Their telepathic and psychokinetic abilities continued to increase, and they were now completely impervious to conditions in the Earth's environment. They walked in two worlds, the fourth density one of enlightened spiritual communities where they taught higher truths and were instruments of healing, and the fifth density world of the nature spirits, where they communed with various beings from all over the galaxy. As the century drew to a close, the Earth began to settle down, with fewer climatic disruptions and a more stable atmosphere. By now, the communities of light had stabilized as well, and most had discovered the highest and best possible form of government. Usually this involved enlightened councils of 12, with each member responsible for a particular aspect of the new society. These governing members were sensitive to the needs of the community and took great steps to minimize egoistic behavior. Education and the attaining of wisdom were the top priorities for members. The young children demanded this, for they were not about to rest on their laurels or involve themselves in petty distractions. They wanted to explore the universe, and they asked all the hard questions that can only be answered through deep inner investigation. The agricultural systems had matured, and the evolving souls had plenty to eat. Their system of trade and barter was now highly refined, and nobody went without the basics. Souls on the new Earth thrived, living with a very high standard beyond what even the richest members of the third density society had achieved. Most of all, they were genuinely happy. Love was the central focus of their lives. Service was integrated into every aspect of their society. Gradually, with the help of advanced technologies and ET groups, they were able to expand their communities to embrace the empty skeletons of the third density cities. They resurrected the houses and buildings, where such resurrection was possible. They cleaned up the waterways and remodeled the factories. Where third density infrastructure was no longer needed, they turned the Earth back into the pristine paradise it was before the Dark Ones had destroyed the balance. The Earth was once again a jewel in the heavens and a place that welcomed celestial travelers with open arms. Chapter 2: The Nature of Time. The story you have just read was given from the point of view of the fourth density enlightened humans and their experience of spiritual community. The story would have had a very different flavor if it had been told from the perspective of the third or fifth density humans. To each of the three main groups of humanity, their experience feels like the one valid reality that supersedes all other versions or perceptions of time and space. Each group uses the Earth as a staging point for the next step in spiritual evolution. For the third density souls, life on Earth becomes harder and harder until they finally leave their bodies and take up residence on other worlds more suited to their level of vibration. To those still able to perceive third density Earth, it will look somewhat like a barren wasteland with very little life remaining. Yet to a fourth density human, the world will return to the verdant green paradise it was before the Industrial Revolution, and a new, more responsible stewardship approach will prevail regarding the air, water, soil, etc. For a time, there will be an overlap of realities. Fourth density humans may temporarily be able to travel to what is left of the third density cities, though most of them will likely lie in ruins. The fifth density ascended souls will have a bird's-eye view, so to speak, being able to walk in the world of enlightened humanity as well as the world of the nature spirits. They will have the ability to perceive the ruins of third density Earth, but their vibration will be so different that to them it will seem as if they are watching a grade B movie with a black and white projector every time they look at third density. You had a book and film come out many years ago, one of your Hollywood products, no doubt. The channel informs us that it was called The Langoliers, and was written by one of your sci-fi writers, Stephen King. In this film, a subworld was discovered that was slightly out of phase to your normal world. In this subworld, sound, movement and color were lower, slower and faded. To add an element of Hollywood horror, the writer invented some bogeymen who would literally chew at the edges of this pseudo-reality. Another sci-fi show that aired for a while on your television was called Sliders. It portrayed parallel dimensions of Earth, although the dimensions in Sliders were separated by physical portals generated by an electronic device. In both of these sci-fi scripts, there are similarities to the three parallel Earths. The parallel realities we are speaking of here are generated by states of consciousness, which have the power to change physical reality. Not only do you see what you want to see, but the world rearranges itself to accommodate your viewpoint of it. If the collective viewpoint is strong enough, a dominant parallel reality is formed. Realities created by large numbers of souls all having similar beliefs are called dominant timelines. Realities that are likely to precipitate into the Earth planes are called probable realities. The nonlinear Earth and her levels of being. From a nonlinear point of view, the Earth already has 7 dimensions of reality existing simultaneously in the here and now. Your passage through the doors of these dimensions rests within your consciousness. For example, if you are vibrating at 7th density, you have access to the 7th density Earth and its beings of light. This version of Earth has indescribable beauty and entities with virtually unlimited power that are able to come and go from her at will. Each of the vibratory levels of Earth has unique characteristics. The 7th level Earth, commonly called Gaia, is the domain of supreme consciousness, love and compassion. This Earth is a member of the lower celestial heavens. While the lowest realms of Earth have been quarantined for millennia, the soul level, 7th density, known as Gaia, has never left her cosmic family of beautiful planetary beings. 6th level Earth is also a beautiful place, and corresponds to the causal level of reality. We will simply call her Upper Terra for now. Upper Terra is a crystal-like world similar to what is portrayed in your sci-fi movie, Superman. It is interesting to note that the lower realms are often a mirror of the higher realms. In this case, your 3rd and 4th density Earth's crust is composed primarily of silicon-based minerals, including quartz, the most common form of crystal. Your 5th density Earth, or Lower Terra, is the etheric realm equivalent of the crystalline structure, and this is the level where the ascended crystal light body form of humanity will emerge in the years to come. You are already familiar with the lower 4 levels: mineral, plant, animal and enlightened human. Just as Gaia has 7 levels of being to her planetary soul, you have 7 levels of being to your individual soul essence. Your home level is 7th density. It is the level where you started out as individual souls, emerging from the Godhead many millions of years ago. Although we are not entirely comfortable with the concept of older and younger souls, we will often refer to those souls that have experienced hundreds of millions of years of exploration of the lower worlds, as old, or even ancient, souls, and those that have only been exploring the lower worlds for a few million years or less, as young souls. Earth has been a place where souls from all levels of experience and vibration have come to learn a variety of lessons. In linear time, this is about to change. The divine dispensations that have been granted by the Godhead, and which are described in detail in Earth Changes and Beyond, include the opportunity for souls to graduate to the next level of evolution very quickly. Put another way, Earth has been a melting pot for all types of souls, but things are getting a bit out of control and the darker ones have brought Earth to the point where her very life seems to be threatened. While this is not ultimately true, the dispensations have been granted in order to correct this imbalance. Earth and other planets are being set up to allow all souls to find their true place where learning can be maximized. In earlier writings, this was likened to taking a one-room schoolhouse, Earth, with grades from primary through intermediate and high school, and finally constructing two new buildings, one for primary grades, new third-density planets, and one for high school, fifth density and above, involving the ascended Earth and other ascended planets, and letting the intermediate grades, fourth density representing the new Earth, take over the original one-room schoolhouse. The relationship between consciousness and time. Let us now return to our discussion of the levels of awareness and how they fit into the nature of time. Higher levels of awareness are more inclusive. For example, if you have a seventh density consciousness, you can perceive all the levels below your level of vibration as well as the qualities unique to seventh density. However, if you are vibrating at third density, you only have access to first, second and third levels. You, dear humans, are exploring the third, fourth and fifth density realities of Earth. Each of you has some of the qualities and characteristics of all three of these levels of being. The one level you are most focused on will become your dominant level of reality in the coming years. Consciousness activates what it perceives. In previous dissertations, this has been likened to paintings on a canvas. The non-activated levels are like blank canvases waiting to be painted. Once you focus on a specific level, you bring life to that level or density. If there are beings or entities already vibrating at a specific level, then those beings activate that level in their own way. For example, the nature spirits and elementals existing in the lower fifth density realms of Earth have created a beautiful reality that fifth density humans will be able to witness as they move into that realm. Your Earth is an experimental world. Many of the conditions present today are different than on any other world in your galaxy. Because you have free will, there are many variations within the overall framework of multidimensional reality. This means that no two planets will ever evolve in exactly the same way. That said, you have 11 other planets in your galaxy that have reached a similar situation to what is taking place on Earth. Let us now look at some of the physical and psychological changes that seem to be happening with time. Changes in the nature of time. Many of you have asked us to address your sense that time is speeding up. Higher levels of awareness are more inclusive. For example, if you have a seventh density consciousness, you can perceive all the levels below your level of vibration as well as the qualities unique to seventh density. However, if you are vibrating at third density, you only have access to first, second and third levels. You, dear humans, are exploring the third, fourth and fifth density realities of Earth. Each of you has some of the qualities and characteristics of all three of these levels of being. The one level you are most focused on will become your dominant level of reality in the coming years. Consciousness activates what it perceives. In previous dissertations, this has been likened to paintings on a canvas. The non-activated levels are like blank canvases waiting to be painted. Once you focus on a specific level, you bring life to that level or density. If there are beings or entities already vibrating at a specific level, then those beings activate that level in their own way. For example, the nature spirits and elementals existing in the lower fifth density realms of Earth have created a beautiful reality that fifth density humans will be able to witness as they move into that realm. Your Earth is an experimental world. Many of the conditions present today are different than on any other world in your galaxy. Because you have free will, there are many variations within the overall framework of multidimensional reality. This means that no two planets will ever evolve in exactly the same way. That said, you have 11 other planets in your galaxy that have reached a similar situation to what is taking place on Earth. Let us now look at some of the physical and psychological changes that seem to be happening with time. Changes in the nature of time. Many of you have asked us to address your sense that time is speeding up. While this is not true from a third density perspective, the Earth still rotates once about every 23 hours and 56 minutes. There is a profound psychological shift taking place within almost all human beings. Some of the experiences you are having at this time are related to the galactic shift, and this includes the speeding up of time. Although there are still 23 hours and 56 minutes to one Earth day from a linear third density standpoint, within the fourth density realm, psychological time is changing. As of the year 2000, those 24 hours really felt more like 16 hours to many of you. As you moved through the 2012 portal, the days seemed to shrink to about 8 to 12 hours in length. Due to your changes in level of vibration, along with changes in the base frequencies of Earth, the time harmonics were altered. Throughout the period 2017 to 2030, the sense of time will continue to be compressed, sped up. Days might seem to be 10 to 12 hours in length. The base frequency of Earth used to be about 8 Hz. Now it has increased to 14 Hz and will remain relatively stable at around 12 to 14 Hz through the duration of the galactic shift. As you go higher in vibratory state, what seems to you to be perhaps a few seconds can be a few hours to someone in a lower state of vibration. At very high frequencies, a few seconds to someone in that high vibration can seem like hundreds of years to someone in a much lower frequency. This is called natural harmonic time compression. There is also a phenomenon known as natural harmonic time expansion. An interesting ability afforded those in the higher realms includes the idea of manufactured harmonic time expansion. This reversal of the natural time compression normally experienced in the higher realms allows time and space travelers from higher dimensions the option of exploring the lower realms for days, weeks, months or even years, and then returning to their own realm wherein only a few seconds have elapsed. An example of time expansion occurs almost nightly during the dream state. Some of your dreams may span years within one dream, but when you awaken, you might find that only 60 to 90 minutes have elapsed. Natural and artificial vortex sites often have expansion or compression of time as one of their features. Generally, positive vortexes have time compression, while negative vortexes have time expansion. This is consistent with the principle of consciousness that says, higher states of consciousness promote time compression, while lower states promote time expansion. In lay terms, this means if you spend time in a positive vortex, time seems to fly by. When meditating in a negative vortex, time may seem to crawl. Just as you can compress and expand time, you can do the same with space. This is how extraterrestrial beings are able to come and go from the Earth plane without having to traverse the great distances described in Newtonian and Einsteinian physics. You have sci-fi authors and filmmakers who have introduced the idea of hyperspace, with spacecraft capable of hyperdrive, or warp speed. Where do you think all these ideas came from? While they are certainly embellished with your typical Hollywood dramas and themes, the central ideas are based on actual mechanics of time and space inherent to higher levels of reality. We will return to our discussion of time and space expansion and compression a bit later in this book, in our section on future technology. One more psychological time anomaly that is worth mentioning involves the idea that the lower dimensions of the universe represent the past and the higher dimensions the future. Because you as human beings are capable of perceiving both linear and nonlinear time, and because you are evolving from lower to higher dimensions in linear time, from a nonlinear perspective, the lower dimensions are part of the past and the higher dimensions are part of the future. Said another way, from a higher perspective, you can see your entire linear timeline laid out before you, stretching from past, through the present and into the future. As you move along your timeline from past to future, your vibrational state increases. This is why you will find the higher dimensions positioned along the future segment of the timeline. So during time and space travel, if you dial into higher dimensional frequencies, you are, in essence, moving into the future, with respect to linear time. From a nonlinear perspective, all of time happens at once, so you are merely shifting your lens of perception to another part of the time-space fabric. We have given a more detailed explanation of this below. A discussion of possible and probable timelines. It is the nature of your world, dear creators, that it serve as a scratch pad for your creative endeavors. Like us, you are creator gods, created in the image and likeness of your creator. You have all the abilities, talents, skills, and potential that we have. What you do with your abilities is up to you because you have free will. Chapter 1 used a retrospective approach to see the dominant timelines of your world as we see them. They are not set in stone. They can be changed and are changing moment by moment. In our millions of years of evolution and understanding of human affairs, we have portrayed the most likely outcomes as we see them. Chapter 1 gave you the scenarios with the highest probability of being played out on your world over the next few decades. In fact, you are an integral part of these dominant timelines, adding your own creative energy to the visions set forth in this book. The presentation given in Chapter 1 is helping to create the very things it describes. You might say, well, if that is the case, then why can't we save everyone instead of only 25% of the human race? Therein lies the paradox of free will. For within the many possible realities is one in which everyone wakes up to the reality of their magnificence and immediately ceases all forms of negativity upon your world. Yet, knowing what we do about the levels of evolvement of souls on your world and the reasons they came to Earth in the first place, it is almost inevitable that some souls will choose to fall back into darkness once again, for they have not yet integrated their original cause issues. They are still reenacting the fall from grace that seemed to happen eons ago. This root cause of humanity's suffering will be approached in many different ways throughout this book in an attempt to help you understand the primal issues that are responsible for the rise and fall of civilizations. The following chapters of this book will go into a detailed explanation of the many changes that are likely to come to your world in the years ahead. We have provided a broad overview, but a practical and sensible question to ask at this point is, how do we get there from here? What tangible steps can I as an individual soul take to help bring about the visions you have described? Of course, we are referring to the 4th and 5th density scenarios and not the 3rd density one. For most of you, the time will soon arrive when you will find that letting go of 3rd density is the sanest approach. We urge you to start today by releasing your remaining identification with that realm. To help you do this, we suggest rereading Chapter 1 several times and talking to others who share your visions of a peaceful, enlightened world. We will also be giving specific techniques, in Chapter 3, designed to help you heal your psychological and emotional issues. Facing the truth of what is. Coming back to our central topic, multiple timelines, it is important to remember the activation principle of consciousness. What you focus on, you become. This is true for collective groups of humanity as well as individuals. Right now would be a good time to observe where you are placing the emphasis in your lives. What is getting the most energy? What is receiving the most attention? We realize there is a fine line between consciously choosing to become a positively oriented ascending human, and putting on an artificially happy smiling face and going into denial about what still needs healing within you. There are many humans obsessed with remaining positive, at the expense of denying major parts of themselves that are in pain. It is not about avoiding pain, or wallowing in it, or identifying with it. True healing is contingent upon how you interact with it. You can be focused on the magnificence of your spiritual being while seeking to fully understand and integrate fear, anger, sadness, grief, resentment, worry, anxiety, dread, terror, rage, judgment, guilt, and all manner of negativity. The key is to look at these things from the oneness of your all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful God presence. Because of the existence of nonlinear reality, or the eternal now, it is not only possible to do this, but ultimately your God presence is the only true reality, and so there is no way you cannot come from that part of yourself. In many of your writings, the analogy is used as follows: you are gods dreaming of mortality and limitation. Indeed, this is the case. Your task, beloved creators, is to recognize when you have become identified with the world of form and all its traps and pitfalls, and to withdraw your energy from the world and return to the one true reality of your God self. Creating a timeline that empowers you. Let us return again to our discussion of timelines. In nonlinear time, you are already enlightened and free and are creating powerfully from the vantage point of your God presence. Spread out before you is a tapestry of time, space possibilities and probabilities. The level of validity of a particular timeline depends on two factors: 1. How much energy and focus you place upon it, and 2. How many of you decide to adopt that particular focus. For example, if you believe in and focus on war as a way to get what you think you need, and millions of others believe and focus in the same way, you will end up creating war on your planet. Conversely, if enough of you adopt the fourth density timeline proposed in Chapter 1, you become a powerful force for creating prosperity and joy on Earth. Anything you enthusiastically adopt as your desired reality gets merged into the collective reality being created on Earth. The extent of your ability to focus on your desired reality depends on how much you have healed your psychological and emotional issues and cleared your core negative beliefs. As you focus on the reality you desire to create and seek out others who have similar desires, you become an undeniable force on the planet. While it may only take one enlightened individual to change the world, several enlightened souls all working together to create a dominant timeline of peace and prosperity will do just that. Past, parallel and future lifetimes. You do not have in your language the words to adequately describe the relationship between the nonlinear self and the myriad of linear selves that thread through the tapestry of possible and probable timelines. We will do our best to keep this subject simple and easy to understand, but we cannot guarantee you will grasp what we are saying here. In linear reality, you have your emergence from the Godhead, let's say 100 million years ago, followed by a series of incarnations in various lower worlds, occasionally followed by a period of respite in the higher dimensions before descending once again to recommence the lessons you did not learn completely in previous lifetimes. Many of you, in fact most of you reading this, have been all over the galaxy in your various incarnations and manifestations. A typical enlightened soul may start out in 7th density Pleiades and then drop in vibration to incarnate for several lifetimes in 5th density Pleiades, followed by a few lifetimes in 4th density Sirius A, then a couple of pleasant interludes in 6th density Arcturus, followed by a challenging round of several lifetimes in 4th density Orion, then a brief visit to one of the early civilizations on Earth as a 3rd density being, then on to more 4th density Pleiadian lifetimes, etc. Finally coming back to Earth at this time. Most souls on Earth have been here before, on average 50 to 100 times, although for a few this is their first lifetime on Earth. Some souls have been here hundreds of times. Starseeds are those souls whose linear timeline consists primarily of lifetimes on other worlds. They may have come to Earth only a few times, usually during the heights of civilizations or during pivotal times around a period of Earth changes. After this incarnation on Earth, you will either, 1. Go through physical ascension, 2. Die and be reborn in the new golden age on Earth, or 3. Choose to journey onto some other planet. As you complete your earthly lessons, you will spend more of your time in higher worlds and less time incarnating into the lower worlds. When you do incarnate on a lower world, it will be for the express purpose of helping souls awaken in that place, just as most of you reading this now have come to Earth from higher worlds to help humanity. The true nature of karma. Each planetary system upon which you incarnate presents a unique series of soul lessons, and when you have completed those lessons, you no longer have any karma, or unfinished soul business on those particular worlds. You are then free to come and go as you will from those worlds, depending on the level of your desire to help other souls there who are still stuck on the wheel of karma. As we have mentioned many times before, karma has nothing to do with reward and punishment. That is an elaborate scheme set up by guilt to convince you that you are worthy or unworthy of enlightenment. In this respect, many of the Eastern religions merely promote guilt from a different angle than the Western religions. For example, if you were born into poverty in this lifetime and have recall of being wealthy and abusing your wealth in a previous lifetime, this does not mean you are being punished for your past transgressions and are destined to remain in poverty for the balance of this lifetime. More likely, it means that your soul simply desired to understand the duality of wealth and poverty from both points of view. In your past lifetime, you were the oppressor, and now you get to experience what it feels like to be the oppressed. Once you have completed a soul lesson, you are free to create your life in a very different way. That means that if you were born into poverty in this lifetime and have learned everything there is about that state, you are free to create wealth once again, perhaps this time with greater love and compassion for others. For many of you, it seems the journey through your earthly lifetimes has been long and harsh, and from a strictly third density point of view, it has been. Up until the galactic shift, Earth had been one of those planets where finishing your karma and moving into ascension was reserved for a few yogis who lived high in the mountains and meditated several hours per day. Now, with the recent divine dispensations, ascension is available to any soul who sincerely desires it and is willing to work on clearing the negative aspects of self. More on parallel lifetimes. Before we take a deeper look at ascension, you may be asking, what about parallel lifetimes? I get the feeling I have other selves in other dimensions living lifetimes in other worlds, or even in other bodies on this world. We can go quite deep with this question, perhaps too deep for your intellectual minds, but let us make the attempt to explain. First of all, your past and future lifetimes are parallel, from the standpoint of nonlinear time, because they are all unfolding right now in this eternal moment, despite appearing to happen sequentially. They are not set in stone. Your past lifetimes are mutating, diverging, converging, and in general changing moment to moment, just as your present and future lifetimes are. You do have what is called the Akashic medium, which records every soul experience, and from that standpoint, your past lifetimes are fixed. But every time you journey back in time and change something, you create a new timeline. In effect, you jump from the original timeline into the new one created by your actions of going back into the past and making changes. The simplest example of this, which is mentioned in detail in the next section in our discussion of healing techniques, is when you perform a timeline healing, which means to go back and give one of your past selves a healing. Unlike the paradox demonstrated in your science fiction movies, you cannot go back and, for example, kill your grandfather and then return to the present and find out you no longer exist as a result. You can only change your experience of the past, which includes making energetic changes to the way you experienced events. By doing this, the original timeline remains intact and you do not violate the free will of other souls having experiences in that timeline. Imagine the dramatic change that would occur to those who burned you at the stake if you were to be rescued by future versions of yourself and carried off into the woods just as the burning ceremony begins. However, you can create an alternate timeline that includes a visitation by future selves, and you can receive a healing from them while in your past lifetime. In the burned at the stake lifetime, you now have an alternative timeline in which your condemned self was visited by future versions of himself, herself. In this alternate timeline, your soul can avoid the trauma originally experienced in association with being burned alive because your future selves can come back in time and lift your spirit out of your body before you have the experience of being burned. This is usually allowed because it does not affect the consciousness of those who condemned you to die. They do not know that you consciously bypassed the burning experience. From a nonlinear perspective, all these alternate timelines are part of the eternal now, and you can access any of them at any time. So they will seem like parallel lifetimes because in fact they are. Every time you change some aspect of linear time, you create a new thread in the fabric of time, space, and these fabrics are all accessible from nonlinear time. There is another type of parallel lifetime that involves what is commonly called soul families and oversouls. You have, usually, 6 members of your soul family on Earth or other lower density planets, and 6 in the higher dimensions, at any given time, and it is possible to meet the 6 earthly souls while in human form and feel a deep connection with them. It is also possible to become aware of their life experiences while at a physical distance. You have an oversoul, which consists of the 12 souls described in the preceding paragraph. You can tune into the oversoul and realize that he or she is one aspect of a larger monadic or atmic self, the oversoul of your oversoul, also called your master oversoul. Each of these 12 oversouls that form your master oversoul, in turn, have 12 individual souls attached to them, and from a 9th density perspective, you are intimately connected to all 144 souls in your master oversoul. The structure of souls and oversouls is explained in depth in Earth Changes and Beyond. For now, we are bringing up this subject to help explain why you might feel you have other selves living other lives in other places. Finally, there is the God perspective itself, which is beyond anything your mind can conceive, but let's go ahead and take it to its extreme. Fasten your seatbelts, please. Have you ever wondered, if you are truly one with everything, why that everything chose to come through your body, in your unique circumstances, at this moment in time? Why did it choose to experience itself through you, and if you are truly one, then why can't you decide, at any given moment, to experience it through your sister, or friend, or someone down the street? Why do you seem locked in this one physical body? The answer is simple, but not easy to understand. If God is everything, then there is no differentiation between any 2 or more aspects of creation. There only appears to be differentiation because of the existence of linear time. From the perspective of God, you can rewind the linear tape of time and experience every aspect of creation, one at a time. Or you can choose to experience all aspects simultaneously. As God, the choice is up to you. That means that this lifetime, you could choose to be Sal in the USA, and in another parallel lifetime, you could choose to be Stephen down the road, then in another parallel lifetime, you could choose to be Sarah in Bath, England, etc. From a linear perspective, it seems absurd that you could experience every life form everywhere in the universe, one at a time, but this is how God perceives its creation, because time is infinite from God's perspective. To overly simplify, that means that God has unlimited time on his, her, its hands to personally experience every individual aspect of creation. Then, while God is experiencing itself individually, it can zoom out to the nonlinear realm and experience everyone at once. While this ultimate viewpoint is available to all aspects of God's creation, it is not possible, while in human embodiment, for you to spend very much time in this state of consciousness, so we will now return to our discussion of the dominant timelines of Earth. We hope you have enjoyed our journey into the profound state of God consciousness. Earth's 3 dominant timelines. Coming back down to Earth, let's take another look at the 3 dominant timelines being created by humanity. Please keep in mind that there are other individual soul realities besides the following 3 descriptions, but over 95% of humanity will likely fall, or rise, into one of these 3 realities in the years to come on planet Earth. The dominant timeline of third density, death and destruction. As we have discussed in the introduction and again in Chapter 1, not every soul is ready to enter fourth density with Mother Earth. Going back to the classroom analogy, there are some students who are simply not willing to do what it takes to graduate to the next level. They are not to be judged or condemned or thought of as less than, dumb, stupid, bad or wrong. They are simply learning at a different pace than the more enlightened members of humanity. The vast majority of souls on Earth have, as their dominant DNA, the Orion strains. This is a result of extensive interbreeding that occurred nearly 500,000 years ago when the star systems of Rigel and Betelgeuse invaded the Earth. At that time, there were no safeguards in place to prevent such occurrences. The souls on Earth were primarily Pleiadian prior to the invasion, and one of their difficult soul lessons was to experience being taken over by a more warrior-like, aggressive, domineering race. We know that most Pleiadian souls on Earth did not consciously choose to become Orions, but on a higher level, this was part of the natural outcome of the original separation and reflected the lessons that came out of the primal beliefs that arose after the fall. Invasions and interbreeding are frequent occurrences in the lower worlds, and on some level the incoming souls to Earth during that time knew that this could happen. Nevertheless, the negative programs, in the form of emotional scars, etheric imprints and astral implants, have remained with humanity throughout several ages. Those souls that are still caught in this cycle of original cause and victimhood will experience one final disaster here on Earth, or several related disasters, such as wars, famine, flood, earthquakes, etc. They will exit during the Earth changes and take up residence on other worlds specially designed to assist them in finally overcoming the reenactment of the fall. After the destruction of Lemuria and Atlantis, a few souls were able to balance their various aspects. They made a commitment to completing the soul lesson surrounding the fall and the resulting experience of having their free will violated, so they could finally move off the wheel of reincarnation and onto the spiral of ascension as fifth density consciousness. Another group emerged that was not quite ready to complete all karmic lessons. These souls grew tired of endless wars, conflict and misery and began moving into fourth density consciousness. The souls stuck in third density, the ones who are working to overcome their remaining karma, and the ones ready for ascension, are all an embodiment on the Earth today and represent the three dominant timelines. The dominant timeline of fourth density, enlightened communities. About 20 to 25% of humanity has evolved to the point where continuously reenacting the fall, and experiencing the resulting constant pain, misery, suffering, abuse, control and oppression, is no longer a soul lesson that needs to continue. This group is ready to complete all negative karma and enter the new golden age. They will get to have what they truly desire, a beautiful radiant Earth that no longer experiences constant wars and environmental degradation. Most of this book is dedicated to this group and centers around the how-to regarding navigation through the difficult transition period and the rebuilding of the Earth after the third density souls have completed their embodiment here and have moved on. The dominant timeline of fifth density, ascension. Approximately 15 to 30 million humans, about 0.3% of humanity, will likely choose the path of physical ascension in the years to come. As described many times throughout our writings, the ascension is instantaneous from a nonlinear perspective, but takes many years, or decades, from a linear time frame. Basically, ascension occurs through a quantum jump at the atomic level. However, because you have trillions of cells in your physical body, and bodies do not like sudden change, there is a master template program that gradually converts your cells into the crystalline light form. Therefore, the complete process of physical ascension will take 10, 20, 30 or more years to complete, depending upon your unique soul path. As stated in Earth Changes and Beyond, physical ascension is vastly different than spiritual ascension. Almost all of you have experienced spiritual ascension, some of you many times. Spiritual ascension involves leaving the body behind and ascending in consciousness into the celestial planes. The celestial planes are the true heavens spoken of in your scriptures. Do not confuse them with the upper astral and lower etheric planes that can mimic the heavens in some respects. Spiritual ascension happens when souls have completed their earthly soul lessons to the extent that they no longer have a reason to reincarnate on earth except to be a teacher and help souls awaken. Many yogis and saints have chosen spiritual ascension, such as Paramahansa Yogananda and Swami Muktananda. Those souls who do not take their body with them into the higher realms during physical ascension may choose spiritual ascension instead. Because of the critical situation on Earth now and the anticipated transitional period of about 10 to 20 more years, souls who choose spiritual ascension will likely elect to either assist humanity as spirit guides, or reincarnate on Earth during the new Golden Age with the specific purpose of helping the fourth density humans rebuild and grow. The majority of you reading this book will become part of the ascending humans in the years to come and are in one of the 3 waves of ascension described earlier. Even if you choose not to transfigure your body into light and instead leave your present body behind with the intention of reincarnating in the new earth, you will find the following chapters to be of immense benefit. At least, you will understand what the ascending souls are experiencing because one day you, too, will go through these stages of evolution. In the following sections, we will describe in detail not only the physical ascension of humanity, but the changes to the structure of your society that were briefly visited in Chapter 1. This book is a how-to, as much as it is prophecy. Remember, dear creators, you have free will and are powerful, creative, spiritual beings. Therefore, do not fall into the trap of simply believing that everything described herein is inevitable. We encourage you to take an active part in the unfolding dynamics of the new earth. This story is about you, the meek that are inheriting the earth. If you were not already a member of the new humanity, you would not have been attracted to this material. Once you embark upon this path, you cannot turn back. You have reached a critical stage in your unfoldment. Any attempts to return to comfortable, familiar territory will be unsuccessful. You will no longer desire your old way of living. None of it will appeal to you. It is as dead as last year's leaves. Let it go. Let it float silently into the void to be recycled into another wondrous creation. We are the founders. Good day.